are honored to welcome a pioneering voice in American journalism, Jackie Nespral. In 1992, Nespral made history as the first Hispanic American network television news anchor when she co-hosted NBC's Weekend Today. Born in Florida to Cuban parents, Nespral grew up in Little Havana and began her career in Spanish-language media. Today, she co-anchors NBC6 News and hosts Impact, a show dedicated to politics and current events in South Florida. This Emmy Award-winning journalist has earned 6 Emmy Awards and the prestigious Silver Circle Award. Join us now for an insightful discussion. Hispanic Voices, a conversation with Jackie Nespral.
Wow, that was good.
Very professional.
Yeah. Who produced that?
We're gonna send you that so that you can watch it now every morning. Start the day with your affirmations.
I want to know who produced that. I want to bring them to MDC6. That was really good.
So we're both University of Miami alum, and you've been very connected to the U and to the next generation. You are on the Board of Trustees, or were on the Board of Trustees of the university, connected with the School of Communications as well, and you were the first Latina president of the Alumni Association. So tell us why that connection to the next generation, speaking to students, is so important to you.
Well, first of all, it's Hispanic Heritage Month, so I think it's important for all of us to really celebrate our heritage. And as a Hispanic American, I was born in Miami to Cuban parents, as you just saw there. So it's always been important for me to have that connection with my community. And so at the University of Miami, I was studying communications. Actually, I started studying psychology. That was my major. And somehow I fell into this beauty pageant, which was the Orange Bowl Queen, and I won. And being the first Hispanic, that kind of started my trajectory into being the first of several things. But always maintaining my pride and my roots of being a Hispanic American, all the way to when I got to the Today Show in New York, which we'll talk about a little later on, but it was very difficult because this was 1992, and now, you know, you can't go anywhere in Miami where you can't find anyone that speaks Spanish. You can find anyone that speaks Spanish, right? In New York City, which is one of the most diverse cities in the country, it wasn't like that. And I got there to a position where I was the first, and I looked different because the typical person at that time was kind of, you know, light-skinned, light hair, light eyes, with a certain accent, like a northeastern accent. And all of a sudden, this Juanita from Miami gets there, and I don't have the proper accent, the proper look. I'm talking about el puerco en la caja china for Christmas Eve, and people thought that I was, you know, very different, and they wrote about me as being a debutante and having an accent, and I was like, wait a second, I was born, raised, educated in Miami, Florida, United States of America. What are you talking about? So it was very difficult. There were a lot of barriers that when I got to New York. But getting back to the University of Miami, I was studying psychology. My mother put me in that pageant, the Orange Bowl pageant, and I won. And all of a sudden I started getting all of these interviews, and one of them was in Spanish, and I was able to do it in both languages. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, being bilingual is really a benefit. And that got me my first job on television, which was Sábado Gigante, which was, I was a model on Sábado Gigante while I was at the University of Miami. And I kind of liked it, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna now study communications. And that's how I started. And I graduated from the University of Miami with a psychology and communications degree, and then I did my postgraduate work at FIU studying journalism. But being a student, I worked in the television station. I worked as a reporter, and then ultimately moving my way up to be, my senior year, I was anchor of the UMTV. Always keeping my Hispanic roots, right?
Yeah, going back to that, because oftentimes people graduate and they sort of forget school, right? And they don't really think about it. But you've stayed connected, and advocacy is important for you. So talk a little bit about why that is essential to you.
Well, I think we should be proud of where we went to school. If it's Miami Dade College, if it's University of Florida, University of Miami, Florida International University, wherever it is, we should be proud and we should be connected. And I always obviously had a sense of pride of where I went to school, but in addition to that, I felt that I wanted to give back because the University of Miami had given me so much, the opportunity to work on television on campus, and that really prepared me for my future in this field. And I thought, you know what? I want to give back, and I want to be able to impart my knowledge, my experience onto students so that they can also do the same thing that I did, whether it's in production or if it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, any part of the business. I wanted to be able to give back. And I have been able to do that. And I've mentored many, many students that have gone on to do incredible things. As a matter of fact, Tom Yamas, which we were talking about before, when he is now the network anchor of NBC News, and he credits me with a lot of what he learned, because when he got to WTVJ, I was already a veteran. And so I really, I took him under my wing, and I kind of like, showed him through the ropes, and now he's like a network anchor. So I'm very proud when I see the people that I've been able to help in a small way or a large way. It gives me a sense of pride, and it all starts with students at any university setting. But I love to do this because if I can inspire, if I can motivate one student in a class to do what I did and to do it well and to do it fair, and to be able to be recognized like I have been, then I feel that I've done my job.
Let's look back at those years, right, when you were a student. Do you have any vivid memories from that time that you can trace from then till now that shaped you into the journalist that you are today?
Well, I mean, not a specific story, but I do remember reporting on campus, and people looked at me odd. Well, what is she doing? And I really didn't know what I was doing, obviously, and how to write concise. I mean, I used to, when I had to write a story, and it was maybe a 90-second package. A package is like a mini story that airs on the news. And I couldn't get it down to a minute and a half. I would write and it would be 3, 4, 5 minutes long. And how do you edit to make it look and to make it look concise, get a whole story, a complete picture of the story in 90 seconds? It's very difficult. And so I remember honing my craft and learning as I was a student how to do that and how to do it and getting an accurate depiction of the story in a very little amount of time. A lot of times, by the way, when you're interviewing someone, they don't like the whole editing process, and that's why the show that I do on Sundays, it's called Impact, and I give them between 8 and 10 minutes per segment and per guest. That gives them more of a time to get what they want to get across. But when you're doing it in 90 seconds and you have
the soundbite.
The dreaded soundbite, and you have to cut them. You have to cut them, and a lot of times the person you interviewed isn't happy with that, because sometimes they feel they've been taken out of context, which I always try and bend over backwards not ever to do that. But it happens. It happens quite a bit. You have to cut what they say, and a lot of times they're not happy with that. But yes, when I was at the University of Miami, that's the part that was the most difficult for me, was to break it down and get it down into a small period of time, the story that I wanted to address.
We're living now through an era of misinformation, a lot of deep fakes, conspiracy theories, partisan spin. How do you and your team cut through that noise?
It's not easy, and especially because we work at NBC, and NBC, for whatever reason, is one of the negative voices, according to some in the industry. In that we're not fair, right? Because you have MSNBC, for example, that has gotten a bad rap, and we are connected with them, obviously. So it's very difficult. So all I can do is control what I do, right? I can't control the noise. I can't control what happens throughout the national broadcasting company, which is NBC. I could only control what I do, and I'm very proud that I interview people from both sides of the spectrum, both sides of the aisle, and they trust me. And I've gained that trust because I am fair. And no matter, obviously everybody has an opinion and everybody feels a certain way, but you have to try to put that aside and, you know, and treat the person, they're a human being, and no matter how you feel about the person or what they've done, you have to be fair. And so I'm proud that I do that, and people from both sides want to come to my show because they feel that they are getting a fair shot. But it takes a while to gain that kind of trust.
Right, because there's also a lot of mistrust now, too. We were just talking about that a few moments ago. It's also an era of mistrust, so not just disinformation, misinformation, but also you know, arrows being slung at the media as well. So, you know, you talked about fairness. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit and how you achieve that trust with your guests.
Unfortunately, now we're living in a time of separation, of divisiveness, especially when you talk about the political world. It's been very difficult to navigate that and to do it in a way that, you know, first of all, people want to see you, and because most of our audience, they also have personal opinions, so they want to get one side of the picture. When you give them both sides of the picture, sometimes they're not happy either. It's interesting because I get emails from both sides. Well, you know, you weren't hard enough, or you didn't ask this question, or you didn't ask that question. And I get it from both sides. And when that happens, I also feel good because I know that nobody really knows where I stand because I'm getting to the story. But, you know, trust is a big word, and especially in our business, in the journalism business, because we started because we want to get the truth out, right? Whether it's a hurricane that, you know, someone, you know, you want to get the truth out. You don't want to be an alarmist. You know, the hurricane's coming our way. You want to be concise, and you want people to come to you because they trust you that they're going to get the accurate information. And if it's an election, you want to get an accurate depiction of the candidates. Right now on Thursday, I will be moderating a debate about the Miami mayors, right? So we're going to get, I forgot how many of the candidates, and I will be moderating it. First of all, it takes a lot of homework and a lot of preparation and a lot of control, because you can get, you know, some of these candidates may want to, you know, fly off the handle and you have to bring them back in and rein them back in, and you have a certain amount of time.
So there's some rules in place.
Absolutely. I mean, I've done senatorial debates, I've done gubernatorial debates, mayor's debates. So this one will be interesting because there are some interesting characters that are running for mayor of Miami.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting. But at the end of the day, they all agreed that I would be the moderator from all the sides. So once again, that makes me feel proud that I'm doing a good job.
AI, let's talk a little bit about it for a moment. So it's transforming how we produce, how we edit, even consume news. At Telemundo, I know that they're starting to incorporate some AI into their scripted content. But there are AI-generated headlines, AI anchors.
Well, this is not really Jackie Nespral. This is not the real me. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what I thought. How do you see artificial intelligence reshaping the newsroom and the role of the journalist?
There's so many benefits, but there's also a lot of negatives of AI, right? So we've seen right now there's a movie about an actress who's AI, right? And so even the Actors Guild is upset about it because they're concerned that they could take some of their actors' jobs away, right? So it's a difficult situation to also have to manage. We use it. I mean, I've used it for, like, you know, ChatGPT and stuff like that for, you know, but you also always have to double check everything and triple check, you know, just like a source. You know, if you get information from one person, at least at MBC, we always try to get it, you know, triple checked before we go with it or go on the air with it. Because we work hand in hand with Telemundo, sometimes we have a script that's in Spanish, and now you can just pop that in, you know, that'll translate it for you, but a lot of times it's not a good translation, right? So you really have to work and make sure that that's not going to go on the air like that, because they do a lot of literal translations that don't work. So we use it in that aspect, but it is scary, quite frankly. You know, in many ways, it's so beneficial in so many other ways, and I do believe that many jobs will be affected because of it. But not only AI, I mean, social media has really transformed my business, because how many of you now get your news from your phone? Raise your hand. Right? Exactly. The majority of you get your news. How many of you still watch local news or network news? Raise your hand. Well, that's good to see that there's still a few of you, right? That's good. I think that we can give a perspective from a local angle that gives it a little more feeling, a little more depth, a little more knowledge than those headlines that pop up on social media. But if it's breaking news and you get notification on your phone and you're getting it and you already know what's happening in the world, God forbid, a shooting somewhere, or I-95 is shut down, northbound lanes, you're getting that on your phone. What we can do is give you perspective. Where is it at? Who does it involve? What happened? And all of the backstory of what happened and who's affected, and then the conditions of those involved, and how long approximately will the lanes be shut down, and so on and so forth. But those headlines, you're getting it from social media or the apps. So that has transformed our business as well, because now how we have to give the news has to be a little more creative as well, right? You have to capture the attention of the viewer and then keep them there.
So what is your social media presence like at this point?
Well, I mean, it's hard because I'm old school, right? So, it's some of the young people that are coming into the industry, the first thing they think about is, okay, how do I put this on social media? And for me, it's the last thing I think about, right? So I think about the story, the person that I'm interviewing, how I'm going to write it, and so on and so forth. And then almost as an afterthought, oh yes, that's right. I have to use this on social media, on digital. So,
do you see yourself downloading the apps and the TikToks and all that stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, right now, not TikTok, but Instagram. Well, I had a huge presence on Facebook. I think it was like 20,000 or 20. Not huge, but for local standards, right? And all of a sudden, somebody tapped into my Facebook, and they hacked me, and then I haven't been able to get back on Facebook since then. So now I'm Instagram and X. But yeah, I mean, but it's difficult for me still, because I'm thinking about the actual story and not how am I going to put that on digital. So it's been difficult for me, but I've had to do it because that's how people are, that's how you're getting to people nowadays.
Most of the emails that you get nowadays, you mentioned they have to do with the Impact Show.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about why.
So my Impact Show, I started right before the 2016 election. There was a big congressional race, and there were like 5 or 6 candidates. And so I did like a mini little debate, and that led to, my news director saying, wait a second, that was really good. We should do a show that involves politics. And that's how it started. Maybe it was 2014 or 2015, so a little over 10 years ago. And all of a sudden, we started getting a lot of notoriety because we got interviews with both presidential candidates at the time. And that led to, now all these years later, I've interviewed, the presidents, not only from the United States, from other countries, even like, overseas, that they've done it on Zoom. That helped too, by the way, COVID, because people started getting used to doing interviews on Zoom, that they didn't feel the need to go to the studio. And so that really opened up our doors and our reach as to who we could interview. So I've interviewed, leaders and presidents from all over the world, and our leaders here, the senators and congressmen and women, and State Department members, and and cabinet members, and 3 presidents. So because of that, that has really garnered a lot of attention. Sometimes not great attention. And when you talk about social media and stuff, I was interviewing President Biden. This was right before he got elected, and I was doing it on Zoom. And I asked him a question about Cuba, and his philosophy and his policy towards Cuba. It seemed like he had a scripted answer. If you're talking to a Cuban American journalist from Miami, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a question about Cuba. And so all of a sudden, I was on vacation. I was in Colorado, and they're blowing up my phone because I'm on social media saying that a journalist from Miami fed the questions to then candidate Biden. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I do not share my questions to anyone. As a matter of fact, now in the debate on Thursday, I said, I will do the debate as long as I have control of the questions. No one's going to tell me, yeah, we could open it up to the audience afterwards, but no one's going to tell me what I'm going to ask. you could give me suggestions, and that's it. And I was like, what are they talking about? So I guess his handlers had told him, you're going to probably get this question, and if you get this question, they may have, I don't know because I wasn't there, they may have told him what to say, and it looked like he was reading because, in the copy it said something like, my policy on Cuba, go to the next thought, and he read that part. So, but that translated to somehow I had given him the question, which obviously didn't happen. So, NBC News in New York had to get involved, and it was resolved that I had nothing to do with that.
Well, it goes back to that misinformation.
Misinformation
right?
And social media, and how things, it could be true or false. It just spreads like wildfire. And that is scary too. But we have to deal with that on any given day.
Let's get a couple questions from the audience.
Questions?
Who's got a question?
Come on, give me a good question.
And we have a mic over here, by the way.
You know what I get? I'll ask myself a question. Why not? And then we'll get to you. Who's the most interesting person that you've interviewed or whatever? And I always say, yes, I've interviewed them all. I'm not Nicolas Cage or Ethan Hawke, but I've interviewed, from the Pope to like I said, presidents and leaders to, whatever, J-Lo and athletes, Dwayne Wade or whatever. I've interviewed them all. But for me, the experience of when I was in Cuba, covering the papal visit there, first as Cuban American, second as a Catholic, and then going to a country that I wasn't allowed to go to as a journalist, that had to have been the most incredible story to cover, emotional, and interesting. I was covering the Pope. This is an interesting story. I don't know how much time we have.
We have time.
Okay, an interesting story. So I was at my hotel with my crew, and I'm about to have lunch. And I noticed that one of the Cuban officials by the name of Alarcón was having a cigar and a drink in the lobby of my hotel. And and this is how you have to be prepared. You have to know who the players are in any story. I mean, it takes a lot of work, a lot of homework, a lot of research. And I knew right away who he was. He was like the number 2 at the time of the Castro regime. I told my photographer and I told my producer, I want to go interview him. So I went up to him, excuse me, Senor Alarcón, I'm a journalist from the United States. I did not say Miami, because obviously he would have his antenna up. And I would like to do a couple of questions about the papal visit. He said, oh, sure, no problem. And he was having a cigar and a drink. And all of a sudden, I start very softly. I'm like, oh, how does it feel to have, the Pope in Cuba? This is a historic visit. And he goes on and on and on and on. And then I went to, well, I know that the Pope wants to meet with some of the political prisoners. And all of a sudden he starts tensing up and he goes, well, yeah, we've given him ample opportunity and this and that. And I said, well, according to the political prisoners and so I started getting stronger and harder questions. And all of a sudden in the middle of the interview, he puts his cigar down, he puts his drink down, and we have all this on tape. He gets up and he walks away in the middle of it. He didn't want to answer the questions. Obviously, they're not used to having a free press there and having somebody ask whatever they want. So that trickled down to me being followed the whole time I was there in Cuba. And even when I tried to leave and my whole crew was able to get out and they had me, in a separate room asking me all sorts of questions for over an hour, that New York was getting involved and everything because they were upset that I had done that. For me, it was shocking because I've never had that kind of experience here. You could say whatever you want about the press, you could say whatever you want, but we have the ability to ask the questions. Whether the person doesn't want to answer, that's their prerogative. But we can do it, we could speak up, we have a voice. And I learned firsthand what it is not to have a voice. And that happened to me. And so to have that experience, it really makes me appreciate even more what we have in this country.
I want to mention something. There were a couple questions, but one of the great things about interviewing someone is when they do exactly what you just did, which is they talk for a long time. They answer the question, right? Some of those one-word answers are the worst. So can you tell us about some of those people, maybe?
Well, I remember Bill Cosby. I interviewed Bill Cosby many, many, many years ago before all this surfaced about him. And he was not very nice. And that was the kind of interview. I was asking him, and he would say, so what was the experience like to film this show or whatever? And he was like, it was good. And later I found out that he was starting to go through this whole process, so he really didn't. He thought that I was going to ask something about, about the accusations against him.
Gotcha questions.
But it was very, very difficult to interview someone like that, and that has stayed with me and I was trying to get around it, and I was trying to ask, great, questions that would make him feel good, and he just didn't want anything to do with it. It was almost like he was forced to do this interview because he had to promote his show.
Sure.
But he didn't want to do it. So those are the most difficult.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have one about J-Lo too. J-Lo was also promoting something, I don't remember what it was, and I always was a big fan. And she's Hispanic, she's made it, in a big way. So, we're in a hotel. First of all, she's like 2.5 hours late, which I thought was so unprofessional to have somebody waiting that long. And so she finally gets there, and she was with her entourage of people, her makeup artist and her lighting crew and her producer, and everybody was with her, making her, look perfect. She didn't even address me. She sits down, she doesn't even acknowledge me. And I'm like, okay, where is this gonna go? How's this gonna go? And all of a sudden the cameras turn on, and she's like, so lovely to see you, Jackie. And she was another person, completely different than the person that she was in person until those cameras were on. So that was another, because that kind of, got me off
Were you
kilter.
able to jump right in?
Oh, I was, and it was like if I knew her my whole life,
Sure.
and we had a great relationship, whatever, the cameras turned off and she went up, and that was it.
And it was done.
That was another interesting one.
Yeah.
There's some great people. D. Wade was one of my favorite people, and he was like, he knew who I was, and I was like, wow, oh, you're a legend here, and he was great, and he wanted to talk, and he didn't want to stop talking, and he was wonderful. And this was in the middle of, the heyday of the
Sure.
Miami Heat, winning championships. Not like now. I digress.
That's funny.
But there have been great ones, and then there have been difficult ones.
Is it important for a student to know what they want out of an internship?
That's a really great question, because I think the more you know and the more educated you are and the more experience you have, you're more marketable in the industry. Our internship programs are very competitive at MBC. And our interns, they're assigned to one department, but the last, I think it's week or two, they do a tour of all the departments and they work in each department so they get a feel of what it's like, because it's so different, because you can be in marketing, in PR, in sales, in production, in front of the camera. You could do it all and only be interested in one field. And sometimes one of the interns will come in and they think that they want to be in front of the camera, and then they decide, oh no, that's not for me. I want to be behind the camera, I want to produce, I want to write, I want to be in production. So I think it's important to really have at least a little bit of knowledge, surrounding this field, whether it's behind the camera, in front of the camera, or other aspects of the industry, and it'll make you a lot more marketable. And when you apply for a job and they know that you have experience in those fields, or you've taken classes and all of that, I think it gives you a leg up on other people that are applying for the same positions. Also,
you have a page program too, by the way, right?
Yes, we do. And that's on a national level.
Yes.
And that's highly competitive as well.
Yeah.
What I was going to say about our program is that it's not only highly competitive, it's highly respected. And most of the people that go through the program, they get jobs afterwards. Another important thing is, I don't know, how many of you are bilingual? Doesn't matter if it's Spanish, Creole, English, whatever, but bilingual. That also helps. If you can hone in on your second language, that's also extremely beneficial, especially in a community like ours. It's so diverse that, we have a lot of reporters now that are reporting both in English and Spanish. They'll do a story for NBC6 and they'll do a story for Telemundo 51, and that makes them even more marketable. So if you can do this job in 2 languages, you're a shoo-in.
Jackie, thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with us. You're an inspiration to everyone at Miami Dade College.
Thank you.
You've made history, you're a consummate journalist, and you've made inspiring and mentoring the next generation near and dear to your heart. You've guided our community through some of the most important stories of our lifetime with clarity, grace, and heart. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us.
A world of education and opportunity within reach. You're watching MDC-TV.